Have you seen the redbuds, the daffodils, the fruit trees shouting, "Look at me"? Of course you have. But if you live anywhere else than Fort Worth, Texas, where I'm living, where I minister at First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church, perhaps you haven't. Perhaps what you've seen is snow, what you've heard is wind, what you've tasted is the sour flavor of winter overstaying its welcome. This is Annie Foerster, and you are welcome here. Welcome to spring. Welcome to Sunday morning worship. Let us begin our time together with music. Our call to worship this morning was written by Evan Carvel-Ziemer, calls it "Our Souls Speak Spring." If we lived in another climate, our souls might speak other languages. We might speak oasis or permafrost, dry season or monsoon, but our souls speak spring. Our souls speak green shoots pushing through last year's leaves. Our souls speak flower buds stretching to the sun. Our souls speak mud puddle and nest building, damp earth and worm castings, tiny green leaves and frog choruses. We speak spring because spring sings in us. We gather to nurture our faith in our own growing, our own courage to push through our own blossoming in beauty, our own small part in the spring of this world. Come, let us worship together. And let us sing a spring hymn. Andy Pierce is our song leader this morning, and we're going to sing, "Lo, the Earth Awakes Again."
Lo, the earth awakes again. Alleluia. From the winter's bond and pain. Alleluia. Bring we leaf and flower and spray. Alleluia. To adorn this happy day. Alleluia. Once again the word comes true. Alleluia. All the earth shall be made new. Alleluia. Now the dark, cold days are o'er. Alleluia. Spring and glad
Our chalice lighting this morning was written by the Reverend Carolyn Owen Toll. Come into this house of worship. Come in bringing all of who you are. Rest and quiet your weak-worn spirit, for you are here to touch again eternal springs of hope and renewal. We light our chalice this morning for hope. Calm your hurried pace. For this hour, let the cares, the fretfulness and worry be set aside. Forgive yourself. You are so very worthy of moving on, of making new efforts, of trying again. Our chalice will burn for new efforts. And know that you are not alone. There is strength and caring support for you here. You will find comfort if you but ask. You are a part of a potential community, a virtual community for now. Let the light burn for community. And please join me in saying our covenant this morning, the one that we repeat every Sunday to celebrate our community together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. For the past few weeks, we have been celebrating Chalaka, a special Unitarian Universalist celebration of our 7 principles. And this is the last Sunday. We're on Principle 7, the interdependent web of all existence. And Rosalind Hunter is going to tell us how she celebrates this principle.
Happy Chalaka. We're celebrating this uniquely Unitarian Universalist holiday by honoring one of our 7 principles each week. My name is Rosalind Hunter, and I'm a member of the church board. I've chosen to talk about principle number 7, respect for the interdependent web of existence, of which we're all a part. As we all know, we're currently being threatened by a virus that's causing death and disability to many in North Texas. Yes, I'm talking about rosette disease. For the last several years, it's been traveling through our community on mites, and it tore its way through the Fort Worth Botanical Garden. But there's hope on the way. Texas A&M has developed little spectrometers that can detect it even in asymptomatic organisms, and through careful quarantining and surrounding plants with non-susceptible plants, they've been able to grow a whole new crop of roses virus-free. It's been a hard year for the corals. The ocean temperatures are rising, and that's been allowing carbon dioxide from the air to dissolve in the water, and it makes the water more acidic, which damages the calcium salts that corals are made of, and it makes them more brittle. And this damage to the coral has been causing problems because it's making them more susceptible to disease and threatening all the other community of organisms that depend on them. On the other hand, it's been a great year for the birds. The lockdowns in March and April caused it to be very quiet in the spring. And so the birds were able to hear each other, and they were able to mate successfully, have large broods, and with the plentiful amount of food, they were able to create large murmurations this fall that flew around. It was a very good year. One can only hope that we also will have a time when we can gather together like they have. Sometimes when we focus on our human problems, we forget that we're just one species in a larger world. Our actions affect the other organisms that live here, and they affect us. We're all together forming one interdependent web of life. We're all connected. I like to celebrate my seventh principle by being aware of what's going on in the stories of other organisms here on Earth. How do you celebrate being a Unitarian Universalist? Happy Chalaka.
This is the time I usually ask a question before I give my responses, but I want to do something different this morning. I want to read a weather report to you. This was a report dated March 12th, 2021. Perhaps you even heard it. It goes like this. Last week, 69 new large fires were reported in 16 states. Firefighters were able to contain 28 large fires. 2 incident management teams are assigned to support COVID-19 response operations in Idaho and Illinois. And here's the weather. A strong upper-level trough will pivot over South Carolina before tracking east across the Intermountain West during the weekend and over the plains early next week. This will bring widespread snow to the Colorado Rockies, much of Wyoming, and western South Dakota and Nebraska. Heavy snow, potentially record-breaking, will likely be focused along the Front Range extending from Denver northward into southeast Wyoming over the weekend. Snow is also expected across the mountains of Utah, much of Arizona, and western and northern New Mexico. Heavy rain will develop across portions of the southern and central plains beginning tomorrow and continuing over the weekend before spreading eastward into the mid-Mississippi, Ohio, and Tennessee valleys and the far southern Appalachian Mountains. Severe weather is also likely across parts of the central and southern plains today through the weekend. Another upper-level trough will move over the west early next week, bringing another round of snow to the Sierras, Great Basin, and the central and northern Rockies. Dry and windy conditions will continue across the southern high plains through the weekend. The eastern edge of elevated to critical fire weather conditions will be modulated by dry line movement and cold frontal passages, with the 2 upper-level troughs forecast to move over the western and central U.S. today through early next week. Low relative humidity and breezy winds are also expected this weekend into next week across portions of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. How did they do? Here are some daily statistics they also reported. The number of new large fires or emergency responses. 63 states currently reporting large fires. Number of active large fires are 39. Oklahoma has 28. Alabama, Kansas, Missouri, Virginia have 2 each, and Kentucky, Louisiana, and Texas all have a large fire. Acres from active fires, 31,358. Fires contained, 28. Year-to-date statistics for 2021 through March 15th, fires, 5,682. Acres, 126,986. Here are my questions for you this morning. Do you live in your town or do you live in the world? When will the earth awaken again? Will it ever? While you're pondering these sad stories, let's look at a more cheerful story, a story for all ages titled 4 Worlds, the Dine story of creation. This morning it is going to be told by David Bindi, who is here in the sanctuary with us. David?
The Dine people eventually became called the Navajos, and this is their creation story, the 4 worlds. Before this world existed, there was a first world, far below the world where we live now. In that world, everything was black. In that darkness, there were 6 beings. Those beings were first man, the son of night, and the blue skies over the sunset. First woman, the daughter of daybreak, and the yellow skies of sunset. Salt woman, fire god, Coyote, and Begachitty. Begachitty, who was the child of the sun, was both man and woman, and had blue eyes and golden hair. There were no mountains or plants in that first world, so Begachitty began to make them. Begachitty made 4 mountains. To the east, he made the white mountain. To the south, he made a blue mountain. To the west, he made a yellow mountain. And to the north, she made a black mountain. Then, Begachitty created the insects and made the first plants. But things were not right in that first world. First beings were just not happy in that dark world. And so they decided to leave. "Gather together the plants and the other things I have made," said Begachitty to the first man. And first man did as Begachitty said. Then he and the other beings came to the red mountain which Begachitty had created. There, Begachitty planted the big reed. As the big reed began to grow, the first beings climbed into it. Up and up it grew, leaving the first world behind. It grew until it came to the second world. In the second world, Begachitty created even more things. He created the clouds. He created more plants and mountains. The color of the second world was blue. And there were other beings in that world, the swallow people and the cat people. And for a time, everyone was happy. Then things began to go wrong. Once more, Begachitty planted Big Reed. Once more, Begachitty told first man and the others to put all things created into it. And Big Reed began to grow. Up and up it went, and carried them to the third world. The third world was yellow. Though there was no sun and no moon, the mountains gave light. It was the most beautiful of the worlds that they had seen. In this world, Begachitty created rivers and springs. He made water animals and trees and birds and lightning. Then she created all kinds of human beings. In this beautiful third world, everything spoke one language. All of the things and beings in creation could understand each other. But everything was not perfect in the third world. Disease came to the people through evil magic. And before long, the men and women began to quarrel, with each blaming the other for the diseases. Begachitty decided to put a stop to it. All of the men, Begachitty said, must stay on the right bank of the river, and all of the women must stay on the left bank. Neither may cross the river. And so it was done. The men and the women lived apart for some time. But they were not happy without each other. "We are not happy by ourselves," they said to Begachitty. "We wish to be reunited." So Begachitty brought men and women back together. "If there is more trouble," he warned them, "this third world will be destroyed by a flood." One day in the third world, Coyote went walking by the 2 big rivers that Begachitty had made. When he came to the place where the rivers crossed, he saw something in the water. It looked like a baby with long black hair. Coyote lifted out of the water and hid it under his blanket. He told no one what he had done. 4 days passed, and then a great noise was heard all around. Begachitty knew that someone had done wrong. Now, this third world was about to be destroyed by flood. Storms came from every direction. Once again, Begachitty gathered all the beings and all the things created. Once again, Big Reed grew up and up. It lifted all of the beings and all of the things as the storm waters rose beneath them. This time, though, was not as easy as before. When they arrived on the fourth world, they found themselves on an island with only water to be seen in all directions. The new world is good, Begachitty said, but it has not yet dried. To live on it, we must dry the mud. We shall dry it, said the winds. The cyclones and the whirlwinds and the small dust devils went up to the fourth world. They swirled around and dried the surface well, so the people and the creatures could walk on the surface. Begachitty, though, looked back down through the hole to the third world. The water there was still rising. Who is the one who has angered the water monster? Begachitty said. And then Coyote opened up his blanket, and Begachitty saw the water baby. You must give the water monster back its child, said Begachitty. Coyote did as Begachitty said. He dropped the water baby back down to the third world, and the waters receded. Now, Begachitty went around the fourth world and placed things in order. The mountains were put in their places. The sun and moon and stars were put into the sky. Then Begachitty told the human beings the right way to live, how to give thanks, and how to care for the plants such as corn and squash and beans. Begachitty gave them many different languages then and sent them to live throughout the world. And so the fourth world came to be. However, just like the worlds before it were destroyed when wrong was done, so too this fourth world is destined to be destroyed when people do not live the right way. And that is what the Dene say to this very day.
Thank you, David. That was a beautiful story. I wanted so much to raise a hallelujah to spring this morning. I even wrote that very wish in my daily journal last week. Officially, spring began yesterday, according to the calendar. But in Texas, it came a week early, while much of the rest of the country is still literally buried in winter. It wouldn't be fair to crow about our good fortune, our good weather, just because we made the wise choice to be born here or the good sense to move here as soon as we could. But being the cockeyed optimist that I am, I considered a service about hope and looking forward to better days, maybe even comparing the patchwork coming of spring to the eventual reopening of the country. No, the whole world to a COVID-free, at least a COVID-diminished world. But like in the Dene Third World, someone messed up and the world began to be destroyed again. In my random search for readings and statistics, I came upon the weather reports and the fire reports, and all the thoughts of celebration were dispelled, except for our brief call to worship in song. And as I continued to explore the world of wacky weather, I was backed into a corner I couldn't escape, compelled by statistics and laments to describe once more what we have come to call climate change. In a search for truth and meaning, you can't choose only the flowers. You have to attend to the weeds, or the flowers will choke and die anyway. We started many decades ago calling it global warming, but that didn't get much attention and apparently was too easy to laugh off. And then it became known as climate change, and statistics became the language of dire warning in the name of science. I know you know all this, but just for review, let me give you a brief definition so we were all on the same page. This explanation is from David Suzuki Network. Suzuki, you may recall, is known in television and radio circles. He's written several books on the environment and is a strong critic of the government not doing enough to protect our planet. He recently wrote, "Climate change describes a change in the average conditions, such as temperature and rainfall, in a region over a long period of time. Earth's climate is always changing over long periods of time, and it has been hotter and cooler than it is now, but the pace of change has sped up significantly in recent decades. Scientists are deeply concerned about the changes they've observed since the Industrial Revolution. Human-caused climate change is affecting the planet in ways that could alter all life on Earth. It's the biggest, most urgent problem we face. In fact, many, including David Suzuki Foundation, have started using stronger terms such as climate emergency, climate crisis, climate disruption, and climate chaos to reflect the severity. And why does climate change happen? Well, carbon is stored all over the planet, in plants, in soil, in oceans, in Earth's crust, even in us. We release carbon into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide through activities such as burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, and cutting down trees and destroying the wetlands. That carbon dioxide builds up in the atmosphere along with other greenhouse gas emissions, creating a greenhouse effect, whereby energy from the sun gets trapped and Earth's temperatures rise. Today, the atmosphere contains 42% more carbon dioxide than it did before the Industrial Revolution. Okay, I'm not going to put you to sleep reiterating the statistics and graphics of glaciers melting, and seas rising, and smog increasing, and polar bears and other species' habitats disappearing, themselves being endangered and disappearing, fires spreading, politicians ignoring, and other familiar complaints. I thought I might awaken your senses of outrage and concern by sharing some lesser-known stories. Here's one that might not yet have caught your attention. Climate change is threatening 3 key ingredients needed to make beer: water, barley, and hops. Some breweries have encountered shortages of clean water. Barley crops have been damaged by heavy rains. Hops have been plagued by drought. A 2018 study suggests that there will be dramatic decreases in beer supply and increasing beer prices due to extreme drought and heat brought on by climate change in the coming decades. If that isn't enough for you, here's more. Most coffee beans come from Arabica coffee trees, which thrives in cool mountain slopes. As climate change has raised temperatures in coffee-growing regions, coffee growers have had to go farther up the mountains to find cool air. It's a short-term fix. Ethiopia, for example, a top Arabica producer, could lose up to 59% of its coffee-growing area to climate change by the end of this century. Globally, we could lose up to 50% of land suitable for growing coffee as early as 2050. Consider a world without beer or coffee. Oh, sure, we'd survive, but that ain't all. Food prices are rising because of unusual weather, including floods and droughts. Insurance companies are refusing to insure homes for storm damage or increasing their premiums to make it unaffordable. Coral reefs are dying because the oceans are acidifying, changing the entire ecosystem of the seas. Drinking water around the world is increasingly at risk. As one report I read said, we used to think of climate change as a problem looming in our future, but we know now with certainty that it's here. I'm going to pause now lest I give you a quick case of disaster fatigue, but I'm only going to pause. I'll be back with more. Right now I'd like to talk to you about something closer to home, to this home, to our shared home away from home. We are in the midst of our stewardship campaign, a time when we ask people to pledge their time and talents and finances to the church. And I've asked Brian Skinner, our board president, to talk about how he feels about this. And I will turn it over to Brian now.
Good morning, First Jefferson. My name is Brian Skinner, and I'm very happy to be speaking with you this morning on the topic of stewardship. But I must say, it's not the easiest subject for me to talk about, especially given the critical importance it has for me. I've been wrestling with a way to approach the topic, wondering how in the world I could communicate what I believe and what I want. The first thing that came to mind is the tried and true phrase that we should all be giving of our time, treasure, and talents. Probably most people have heard those words as a part of a stewardship campaign in the past, and I do like them, especially the time and talents part. Yes, the campaign is about monetary donations, but I believe the other two are equally important. There are so many things to do at First Jefferson to keep the church running and programs flourishing. There are so many opportunities for outreach into the community. First Jefferson also simply needs your participation and involvement. Another approach that I've considered is to appeal to your sense of urgency. Ever since I've been a member at First Jefferson, about 5 years or so, the church has been under financial strain. And it doesn't take much to look around the building and see evidence of this struggle. But the pandemic has taken an even further toll. And knowing this, it verges on the ridiculous for me to appeal for more financial help for the church, given everyone's circumstances. But for those who can help a little more, I can't tell you how much it's needed at this time. Serving on the board of trustees for the past 2 years has taught me a lot about the workings of the church and what all is needed, what all is in jeopardy. We need new staff and more support. We need building maintenance. We need to prepare for what might be major changes coming next year. I have great concerns about what will happen if we cannot get on our feet and be in good financial shape as we enter into those changes. All of this is true, but in the end, I don't want my message to be downtrodden. Instead, I want to leave you with a message of inspiration and hope. Coming out of the pandemic, coming back together again, and starting anew, do you know what the possibilities are? Have you really thought about that? They are countless and immense. There is so much we can do together for the causes we believe in if we work together to support the church and its needs. We get to define, again, who we want to be, how we impact our community, how we support each other together, and what we learn together and how we serve together. We get to build a new vision and mission together. Isn't that incredible? Every week I see church committees in action. I am aware of new committees forming, like a social justice committee, and a proposed communications committee. I hear so many ideas from members during different calls. During the past 2 Tuesday night WHERE lecture discussions alone, there have been many possibilities discussed for better membership development, better outreach into the community. You can tell that the members are longing to be a part of these things and to do more. So even though the church has in some ways been dormant over the last year, I promise you, there is a great deal of rustling and rumbling and energy boiling around underneath. It feels really exciting to me. It's a rare opportunity to be in on something really big from the start, to be working on the rebirth of First Jefferson into something amazing. I am so energized by this, and I am showing my commitment to these possibilities by increasing my donations of my time, treasure, and talents to First Jefferson again this year. And I urge you to do the same and join me in rediscovering and reshaping what we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I still long for the hallelujahs to spring that I had planned for today. In their place, I want to offer you a paean of hope before I continue what I have come to say this morning. This is one of my favorite poems by Mary Oliver. Every morning, the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again and fasten themselves to the high branches. And the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries within it the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it's all you can do to keep on trudging, there is still somewhere deep within you a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what is wanted. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly every morning, whether or not you have ever dared to be happy, whether or not you have ever dared to pray. Please join me in singing our next hymn, Morning Has Come.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
We need songs like that to keep our spirit up, don't we? If I truly wanted to live a life of peace and serenity, I'm realizing I would have to disconnect Google and Bing from my computer. Often when I seek answers of the world, they tell me more, much more than I wanted to know. As if it isn't enough to have to look forward to a world without beer, coffee, water, and polar bears. What they told me this time was there are websites everywhere that can prove that climate change is a cruel hoax, a liberal plot, a fairy tale, and a scam. I'm not going to dignify them by sharing their names with you, but here are just a few of their arguments. You can't trust scientists because there are more academics now than in recorded history, and they all are vying for the same limited grant money to do their research and publish their books. The statistics they create are bloated and unprovable and are meant only to save them from publish or perish. How's this? You can't predict weather changes so far into the future. Reality doesn't mimic computer graphics. Or this one. You can't sustain a livable economy and fight an imaginary dragon at the same time. We have to choose to create the best lives for ourselves now. Yes, those are just a few of the negative ones. But here are some of the positive outlooks. We are living longer than ever before. That proves the world can support us, that climate has made no difference. We are healthier than ever before. Same argument. Our economy is stable. Why risk changing it? The poor will always be with us. The Bible says so. Oh my. You know, I remember first hearing about global warming in the 1970s when I was working as a journalist and business writer. I was an instant believer, and I don't remember what sold me on the idea, but I do recall how passionate I was about it, that how often I wrote about it in the publications I was responsible for. And that was almost 50 years ago. Another hot topic at the same time was population control, the belief that the planet could not support the increase of people if the birth rate continued at their then percentage. You don't hear too much about population control anymore, but the results are as predicted some 50 years ago: overcrowding, locations of starvation and disease. Of course, these problems aren't distributed evenly, and so many of us can just ignore them, dismiss them, refuse to think about them. But this and other warnings, endangered species, water shortages, poverty, are all somehow wrapped up in this current debate about climate change. 50 years ago, I began writing about global warming, and every hard winter, disbelievers would laugh and say, "Where is your global warming now when we need it?" And as I began to ponder the new statistics, the new arguments, the recent tragedies and disasters, I am numbed to realize we have been talking about this, arguing about these ideas for generations. I'm tired, and I'm discouraged, and I want my cockeyed optimist status back. And here I am again, sifting through data, trying to make sense of it. Looking at, listening to my neighbors, my own family telling me I am a fool, sharing with you my frustrations. There is more agreement than dissent than there was 50 years ago. That cheers me, but not very much. I want to quit arguing. I want to do something, and I have to believe that so do you. Let's look at this differently then. Let's make a new plan. But before we go there, let us pause a moment and take stock of here and now. This is the time in our service when we explore a communion of names and milestones, the stories that are told in this community of joy and concern. I have not heard of anything from you about what's going on in your lives, but I would like to share with you a kind of sample story from the news that is in all of our lives, in all of our ears. On March 10th, A firefighter from Ponca Hills Volunteer Fire Department was fatally injured as a result of a medical condition while engaged in wildland fire suppression in Washington County, North Nebraska. The firefighting community extends condolences to the family and friends of the deceased. These are the kind of stories that are going on everywhere. These are the kind of stories, even if we don't know the people, that we need to keep in our minds and our hearts. I would like to offer you a meditation, a guided meditation this morning called Circle This Flame by Amy Brooks. Thick smoke fills the air in Oklahoma. California is smoldering and beginning to rebuild. I light this candle to stand for the fires everywhere. Fire, a source of warmth and life for our ancestors and for humans still today. Tool of agriculture, hunting, and creativity for our ancestors and for humans still today. But when fires run wild, we forget that it is a natural companion for all of us within the web of life. When fire runs wild, we prefer not to think about the many ways that we have contributed to the increasingly unstable climate of this planet. When fire runs wild, we become fearful. We share water from this community with the people of the world. This is what we need, what we're running short of. But we share this water to honor the sacrifices of those who fight fires. We share this water as tears of mourning for lost lives. We share this water with all who thirst for ecological justice. We circle a community of love around the flame that we lit, and we find strength and courage together. The candle would be underwater if not for the protection of the glass around it. May we be the glass. May it be so. Let us take a moment to meditate and listen to some meditational music. Every day at sunrise or thereabouts, Liam, my fur-person companion, and I go for a walk. I like to see the sunrise on days that it isn't overcast or raining. Liam likes to leave pea mails for his canine buddies along our route. I sniff the air for the aromas of flowers that are beginning to return. He sniffs the ground for more practical, more mundane reasons, like who's been here before us and what might someone have dropped that could be supplement to his diet. Occasionally, we both catch a whiff of Miss Skunk, a neighbor who uses the empty lot next door to make her way to the river behind our house for her morning ablutions and hydration. And during the winter, I am subjected to another odor that gives me daily concern, but which I haven't yet figured out how to alleviate. There are 5 neighbors within the daily peregrination around our 1-mile route who go out 5 to 10 minutes before their departure for work or to take the children to school, start their cars, and then go back into the house. Only when the interior of their car is cozily temperate do they return to it and drive away, coats unbuttoned against the cold between home and auto, or not even worn. The stench from their emissions accumulates and is clearly noticeable as we walk by. I am daily annoyed as I ponder how much CO2 they are sending into the atmosphere. And those are the 5 neighbors who leave at the same time I take my daily walk. I can only extrapolate how many more do the same during a different 20-minute period. Every weekday, I am annoyed and angry. They all seem to sleep on the weekends, and every weekday I do nothing about it. I have thought of talking to them about how it isn't good for modern cars to sit idling for too long, and what damage they are doing to the atmosphere. And every morning, if they emerge as we walk by, I simply call out, "Good morning," or "Have a nice day." I don't want to fight with my neighbors. I don't want to be known as the neighborhood scold. Recently, and I have time to think about this until next winter, I have considered finding some online statistics, some experts' advice on this very topic, printing it up, and sticking a copy under their windshield wiper before they leave in their toasty warm vehicle. It would be something, wouldn't it? I would give something to the cause. What else can I do? That's the question, isn't it? What else can I do? What else can you do? What can we do together? Well, that's what I want to talk to you about now. I did Google that question purposely. I did do some research on that question. The answer is the same as it often is for most of our social, political, and moral quandaries. Join with others. What we can't solve alone, we have a better chance of defeating in numbers. Remember my mentioning David Suzuki earlier? His website, which you can find at davidsuzuki.org, and I'm going to have that put on the screen, is the best one I found for answering the questions, what can I do? I mean, he lists 10 things that each of us can do personally to alleviate the problem. Things like write to our congressional representatives, eat healthier meals that are also better for the environment, walk more instead of driving, the usual remedies, and some you may not have thought about before. But he also includes a list of the 6 most successful organizations that you can donate to or join. He explains what each one does, how they will affect the future, and what you can do if you want to be a part of the solution. Let me give you just a taste, an optimist's taste of what is involved. First, he talks about the Coalition for Rainforest Nations, a coalition of 50 rainforest nations around the world offering to pay developing countries that can show they've been preventing deforestation, a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions. According to Founder's Pledge's cost-effectiveness model from 2018, a donation of just 12 cents to the Coalition for Rainforest Nations will avert approximately 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide, or the equivalent in other greenhouse gases. This means that if you were to donate $100, you personally can avert around 857 metric tons of carbon dioxide. While the average American causes about 16 metric tons of emissions per year, and most organizations can't avert a metric ton for less than $2 per ton. Look them up. Here's another one. The Clean Air Task Force, a U.S.-based non-governmental organization established in 1996, is known for targeting emissions sources that are neglected by other environmental organizations. They, too, have a lower than average success rate of reducing CO2 emissions per dollar donated. The third one I want to tell you about is the Climate Emergency Fund. The Climate Emergency Fund is different from the two groups listed above. It was founded recently, July 2019, with the goal of quickly getting money to groups engaged in climate protest. It has already raised and dispersed several hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants to groups it has vetted. The grantees range from the well-established 350.org to the fledgling Extinction Rebellion, an activist movement that uses nonviolent civil disobedience, like filling the streets and blocking intersections, to demand governments do more to stave off mass extinction. There is something in this, something for at least for everyone. And that's only 3 of the 6 organizations recommended on David Suzuki's website. I just wanted to give you a taste of what's out there. Although the climate is already changing and disasters abound, people like Suzuki and these organizations say it's not too late to avoid the worst of it. It is not too late to do something. Bill McKibben, co-founder of 350.org, a global grassroots movement, recently said that building the climate movement is crucial because although we've already got some good mitigation solutions, we're not deploying them fast enough. He said the only way to break that power of the fossil fuel industry and change the politics of climate is to build a countervailing power. He said our job, and it's the key job, is to change the zeitgeist, people's sense of what's normal and natural and obvious. And if we can do that, he says, all else will follow. Oh, my optimist heart, say it's so. Say it's true. Say we can be a part of the solution. Say that we can take pleasure in the flowers today and maybe continue to do so for decades. No, centuries to come. Please join me in singing this prayer. Oh, give us pleasure in the flowers today.
Give us pleasure in the flowers today, and give us not to think so far away, as the uncertain harvest keep us here, all simply in the springing of the year. Oh, give us pleasure in the orchard white, like nothing else by day, like ghosts by night, and make us happy in the happy bees, the swarm dilating around the perfect trees, and make us happy in the darting bird that suddenly above the bees is heard, the meteor that thrusts in with needle bill, and love and nothing else is love, the which it is reserved for God above, to sanctify to what far ends he will, but which it only needs that we fulfill.
Robert Frost wrote those words in the very earliest years of the 20th century, when this problem was not a problem. Oh, that we could return to those days. My benediction today comes from David Suzuki. I hope you look him up. I hope you read more from what he has to say. He said, "What's lacking is political will. We need to hold our leaders accountable for taking bold action on climate change. We need to demand a healthy, sustainable future so everyone can thrive. So may it be in all our lives."